Welcome, everyone, to our candidate forum for the 1st Congressional District here. We're so happy to see so many people here tonight invested in hearing from the candidates. I'm Christina Goodwin, and this is Jess Spillers. We host the Spill the Goods podcast focused on all things Manchester and how policy affects you. So if you haven't checked it out yet, please give it a listen on all podcast platforms. So our goal there was really to drive engagement and participation in local politics and to make the process feel more accessible. So we're really thrilled to be hosting this forum, and we're really thrilled all of the candidates are here to participate. We did ask you all to send us questions, and we received over 60 of them, which is amazing.
Great.
We only have 90 minutes. We can't get to 60 questions, but there were some definite themes that came in, so we hope we're covering everybody's most important questions. You'll be able to hear directly from the candidates this evening about their priorities and their platforms, and we hope you leave tonight with a better understanding of who they are and you feel more informed going into the primary in September. So we're going to start off by letting each candidate give us their best elevator pitch. 90 seconds intro, please. We'll get into the questions. We've got one question for each candidate specifically, and then a group for all of them to answer. So you'll get to hear a lot from everybody. Additionally, we have Manchester Public Television here supporting the audio. Thank you so much. It's going to be filmed and available on their website later after this event is over. And we also have a few sponsors we'd like to thank: Manchester Ink Link, Village Play Cafe, Southern New Hampshire DSA, and Keystone Press. So if everyone's ready, please give the candidates a warm welcome, and we'll get started. Yes, and also for anybody I didn't catch, my mom is down here in the corner. She's going to be giving you some time. So yellow card means you've got 30 seconds left. Red card means your time is up. So please keep an eye on her. And if you'd like to start us off, Christian, and we'll just walk down the line with a little intro.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Hopefully the microphone picks me up. So my name's Christian Urrutia. And to me, Manchester's a big part of my story, actually. So my parents immigrated. Thank you. My parents immigrated to the United States, and the job my mom got was at Catholic Medical Center. ICU nurse, night shift, worked there for 25 years. And it provided a foundation of opportunity. Opportunity for me to get an education, opportunity eventually to go to law school, opportunity to go and practice international law and human rights, take on war criminals, end up becoming a public defender for our service members, and an appointee of Biden, working on international humanitarian legal issues. But I gotta be candid with all of you. That notion of opportunity in America is completely under assault. I'm reminded of what my parents have always told me. They even tell me this today. Tienes que trabajar duro. You have to work hard. But right now in America, hundreds of millions of people are working hard, and they cannot get their heads above water. And you don't need me to convince all of you. You see it with folks that can't afford their health care, while health care companies make billions. You see it with folks that are working 2 to 3 jobs, and they can't afford child care. You see it with wages that have been stuck for more than a decade while costs skyrocket. And what we need in Washington is folks that will bring change, and that's why I'm in this race. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Stefany Shaheen. Grateful to see so many wonderful faces here tonight. Thank you to Jess and Christina for making this happen. Looking forward to a terrific discussion, and grateful to my fellow candidates for being up here with us this evening. I got into this race because RFK Jr. became Secretary of Health and Human Services. That is the fact. And the reality for me, as someone who's dedicated my whole life to navigating a healthcare system that we know is broken and needs to be fixed, This happened after my eldest daughter, Ellie, who actually is with me here tonight in the back row, I'm very grateful to have her with me, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 18 years ago. I've seen firsthand what it takes to fight the insurance companies, to fight the pharmaceutical companies to get her the care she needs. So to have a man at the helm of the agency most responsible for the health and well-being of the American people, who doesn't believe in science, who chooses to perpetuate conspiracy theories over things we know work, like vaccines, who has presided over cuts to Medicaid and made it harder for people to access Medicare, I knew I had to stand up and fight. Look, there's a lot at stake in this election, and it's going to take all of us working shoulder to shoulder to defend this seat. We have to win a majority in the U.S. House if we're going to get this country back on track and move it in the direction we know America is capable of being. I'm compelled to be in this fight because when you've had to stare in the face of your own child's mortality as often as I've had to, you know what real fear feels like. I'm not afraid and I'm not daunted. We've got to bring the fight to Washington, and that's why I'm in this race.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carleigh Beriont, and I'm really grateful to all of you for being here tonight with us. Thank you, Jess and Cristina, for organizing this and bringing us together. I am a teacher. I teach about history and public policy, about the choices that our leaders have made that have brought us to this moment, and about the decisions that we need to make together to move beyond it. I'm also a mom of 2 awesome little kids. I'm a former union organizer. I'm married to a public middle school teacher, and I am the chair of the select board in Hampton, where I see every single day how many families are hanging on by their fingernails right now. I hear from people in their 80s who have had to go back to work in order to afford their property taxes. I hear from families who can't afford to pay for their heating oil and medication for their kids. My daughter had a friend in her class last year whose mom got hit by a car and she lost her job and her health care and her home. I'm running for Congress because we need leaders in Washington who see our problems as their problems and act with the urgency and the courage that this moment requires. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here, and thanks to Cristina and Jess for bringing us together. I'm Maura Sullivan. I'm a working mom of 3 young kids. I live on the Seacoast with my husband, who is a Navy veteran. I'm a proud Marine Corps Iraq War veteran and was proud to be appointed by President Obama as Assistant Secretary of the VA and as a senior Pentagon official. I'm running for Congress for 2 reasons. Number 1, I love our country, and I believe so much in its promise. I risked my life for it, and I served with great men and women who gave their lives for it. And I look around, and this is not the America that I fought for. Number 2, I love our community, but people are hurting. You know, I am truly the product of the American dream. I was a scholarship kid who waited tables to get through college. I want every kid in New Hampshire to have the same shot that I did. We all know the stakes in this election. Here's why I'm the best candidate. I'm a proven fighter. I've stood up to Trump before. I will do it again, and you can trust me to do that, to bring down cost, to root out corruption, and to hold this administration accountable. Taking on this administration is far from the hardest thing that I have done. Second, I'm the candidate who can win. We've all seen around the country how veterans are outperforming. Look at Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger. I've out-fundraised everybody in this race, including the leading Republican, and I'm building a coalition ranging from progressives to independents to Republicans to not only win this seat, but heal our country and move us forward. I hope to earn your support. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Chadzynski, Sarah C. for 603. Made it easy for you. I'm a mom of 3, a teacher and a nonprofit leader. My husband is a staunch independent and a timber framer and a local firefighter, and we love raising our family here. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck and to rely on food stamps during hard times as a single mother. I also know what it's like when people come together to fight for what's right. I've worked internationally. I've gone into war zones. I've documented war crimes. I've drafted bipartisan legislation and then built the coalitions needed to get it passed, all to stand up for freedom, democracy, and human rights. It's now time to bring that fight home. This isn't about left or right. It's about making real change for working families, standing up for our freedoms, and ensuring an affordable future for everyone. We have an opportunity right now to elect a working class candidate, to build trust and faith in our government in a time when our country is increasingly divided. We cannot miss this moment. It's our time to shape the path ahead. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I look forward to answering the questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is State Representative Heath Howard. I'm running for the 1st Congressional District because of my experience in the healthcare system. See, when I was 15 years old, I suffered a severe back injury where I had an L4 burst fracture. I had 4 rods, 8 screws put in, I had to have my spinal cord rebundled, and I'm very thankful that I wasn't paralyzed. But that experience showed me just how broken our healthcare system really is, and why we need to have a universal healthcare program that actually covers every single person. Because no person should go bankrupt from an injury or an illness. I also have experience in Concord as deputy ranking member on executive departments and administration and the ranking member on the subcommittee on pensions. I've done a lot to really push back against some of the Republican efforts in Concord. And this is in a Republican trifecta. This is a situation where they have the governorship, the Senate, the House, and they have no real incentive to come to the table and work with Democrats. But that's where we have to work on building our relationships so that we can force people to come to the table. And that's exactly what I've done. And that's what I'll do in Washington. Because we need people who are going to actually be able to solve these problems. Not necessarily just talk, but we need to find the cracks where Republicans will actually leave and join us. Where Democrats can be reinforced so that they don't split away and vote with the Republicans. To make sure that we actually have as much support in Washington as possible, rather than just the scraps that were seemingly being thrown by our elected officials. Thank you.
So now we're going to dive into some questions. And as we said, we're going to have a question specific for each candidate, and then the other questions and will be for everybody, and we'll just kind of go down the line here. Saying you'll have 90 seconds, so look for that yellow card and that red card. And just so that we can get through everything, I'm sure they're going to have some wonderful answers, and you're going to want to applaud and cheer. We just ask that you hold that, keep it to a minimum so that we can get through all of the topics that folks were concerned about when they submitted questions. Our first question is actually a specific one for Carleigh. So Carleigh, you'll have 90 seconds. Right. Carleigh, a primary issue of your campaign is reining in Big Tech. Yeah. So much so that you do not have any social media accounts. How do you propose to regulate the tech billionaires and harness their power for positive change?
Great question. Thank you for asking. Let me first tell you what I do have. What I do have is an amazing website, CarleighBeriont.com, and an amazing email program, and a list of blogs that I've written after every single event that I have attended this year, so over 200 in total. And you can hear my policies about every single issue that you might care about on that website. And if you don't see it, let me know, because I will write something about it. Why am I not using social media? I am not using social media for a couple of reasons. One is because all of our social media platforms are owned by right-wing billionaires who have way too much political influence in our system, and I do not feel like it is appropriate to take money and give it back to them. I don't think that we can rein in big tech by paying for them. I don't think that we can gain influence or power and then use that to oversee them. So what I want to do in Congress is break up monopolies. I think right now we have overwhelming influence in big tech companies. I also think that we need to do a lot more for consumer protections and privacy. Our data is being used in a way right now that we did not consent to. Nobody voted for big tech to be running our lives the way that they have. It is profoundly undemocratic. And I'm someone who's willing to put my money where my mouth is. This is something that I believe a lot in. And so I am willing to put my faith in the people, the 600 plus people who have signed up to volunteer for this campaign, because I believe that the conversations that we need to have are in rooms like this, not online.
Thank you.
Broke my own rule. Sorry. Okay, this question is for all the candidates, and you'll each have 90 seconds. How can voters know you'll put their best interests first if you are taking corporate, PAC, or dark money? Will you be beholden to your large donors or to your constituents?
So, Kristen, if you want to start,
Yeah, let's see if I can.
Sorry. So look, one is what we're willing to say and what we're willing to do. So let me tell you about my campaign. The average donation of my campaign, $26. Over 30,000 contributions at this stage. I've never taken corporate PAC money. Never have, I never will. I've actually went on air just 2 weeks ago on WMUR. And I've made a very simple pledge and, frankly, a challenge to everyone in this field. Let's all say no to corporate PAC money. Let's say no to dark money super PACs. Let's tell them to stay out of our race. Let's say no to APAC. Let's say no to DMFI. Why should they dictate our elections? We all know what happens. These groups come in. They funnel a bunch of, frankly, Republican money and carpet bomb our airwaves, slandering politicians in the ugliest of ways. I've called for that money to stay out, but frankly, we also need to bring change in Washington. We need to overturn Citizens United. We need to actually get rid of money in politics. But this is the thing. The candidates can live those values. And the question is, what are they willing to pledge, and are they willing to say, stay out of our race to these big money interests that are corroding our political system? I'm willing to say it, and I challenge everyone to do the same.
I think this is one of the most important questions of this moment in our nation's history. We absolutely have to overturn Citizens United. We absolutely desperately need campaign finance reform. That is why I have pledged to not take any corporate PAC money. The thing I am most proud of in this race is the number of Granite Staters who have stepped up to support our campaign. Approximately 90% of the contributions we've received from people who call New Hampshire home are $100 or less. 2,700 people have stepped up to support this campaign, people who call New Hampshire home. I've received more money in terms of support from New Hampshire citizens, Granite Staters, than all of my fellow opponents combined. And it matters because the money that is supporting these campaigns matter. And we need resources to fight back. Look what just happened today. Turning Point USA endorsed our likely Republican opponent, Anthony DiLorenzo. They are going to flood the airwaves. He has already spent $100,000 to buy television ads, including on Fox. So we have to have the resources to fight back. But we can do it without corporate PAC money and with support right here from New Hampshire citizens. That's what matters most, and we should all commit to ensuring we represent the people who call New Hampshire home.
Money in politics is a poison. I fully believe this. I am sure that every single person in this room agrees with that. I am not taking any corporate PAC money in this campaign. You can go look up the Political Integrity Index and you will see green check marks next to my name. I believe that if we want to govern with integrity, we need to run with integrity. And there's a lot that we need to do. But the first thing we should recognize is that Congress can't overturn Citizens United. We need a constitutional amendment to do that, or we need to radically reform the Supreme Court. Things that we can do: not take money during a federal shutdown, enforce and hold ourselves accountable to term limits, close the revolving door between lobbyists and elected officials, ensure that we pass the Disclose Act, which would get rid of, or at least open and air out, dark money in politics, which is about to become an even bigger problem if I think the Supreme Court decision in June, comes down the way that I think it will. The only way to counteract money in politics is to look one another in the eye and talk about what we want our country to be like. There is no shortcut. We need to learn how to agree, how to disagree, have conversations that are civil, and not walk away from the table when it comes to the issues that we care most about. So I'm somebody who fully believes in unrigging Washington and is doing everything in their power to ensure that when I get to Washington, I am accountable to the people who have supported me, which is people like the people in this chair, and not people with billions of dollars and an agenda. Thank you.
I really appreciate the chance for us to talk about this. I think everyone in here, and Carleigh just said this, agrees, like, the money in politics right now is absolutely disgusting. My team is standing here and they could tell you, like, I absolutely hate having to fundraise, hate having to do it. But I'm going to keep doing it because we're running against a MAGA self-funding opponent. And 700,000 people in this district depend on who is in this seat. But you brought up a really good point on corporate PAC money, and I want to address that. I don't take any corporate PAC money, never have, never will. And I was the first candidate in this race to release an anti-corruption platform. That's how strongly I look at Washington and think it is so rigged, it is so broken. And it's not, we no longer have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Those simple words that Lincoln uttered at Gettysburg. We literally have a government of the corrupt, by the billionaires, and for one another. And it doesn't have to be like that. So what does Congress need to do? Congress needs to pass my anti-corruption platform, which is banning corporate PAC money from all of politics, not just people who decide not to take it on principle, which is what I did. Overturning Citizens United. Also banning individual members of Congress from trading stocks. It's disgusting. When I was a senior Obama administration official, I had access to a lot of privileged information. I sat across the table from members of Congress all the time. We shouldn't have been trading on that, and there used to be a norm that people didn't, but we now know that norms aren't enough. So we need to pass my anti-corruption platform and overturn Citizens United and get dark money out of politics, period.
So we're not doing a very good job not clapping, but I love the enthusiasm and energy in this room tonight. So I'm going to build on everything that's been said. I think we're all fairly similar in what we're going to say about Citizens United. We need to be strategic on how we get there. To Carleigh's point, she's exactly right. It needs to be longer play to get Citizens United overturned, but what Congress can do is put regulations in place through the FEC as to what we are able to raise for dollars in a congressional race. We are the only country in the world that spends the amount of money that we spend on elections. When I think about just how much has been spent already at this table up here, when I know families that can't afford food, that can't pay their electric bills, that can't buy life-saving medication, that tells me that something is systematically wrong with how we're doing things, even bigger than Citizens United. So I'm running on a platform that is strategic. I have a background in nonprofit work, and I operate on a shoestring budget. And so my challenge to everybody here at the table is, can you operate on the most efficient, effective budget and get the job done? Because that's what I've done for 20 years. So the other point that I'll make is that this is a role of service. And all of us at this table have committed to support each other, whoever wins the primary. So whatever, yes, we can clap for that. Please clap for that. Because primaries are a healthy thing, my friends, and we need them, right? But what I want to point out when we're talking about dollars raised, I think we need to flip the script. It's about dollars spent, because we're running against each other, and when one of us makes it through the primary, we're all going to be pitching in and supporting whoever that is. Thank you.
So, yes, we need to overturn Citizens United. We need to ban corporate funds from being spent in elections. We need to stop congressional and executives from being able to trade stocks because of the privileged information that they have. But we also need to go farther. We need to uncap the arbitrary 435-member limit that the House sets. Because when we're looking at the size of the districts, we're talking about nearly 700,000 people representing one district. And that varies from district to district. Some people have more representation than others. But when Congress was first debating the implementation of how these districts would be run, they were talking about 30,000 people per district, which, of course, that would be thousands of reps and not necessarily possible. But we need to be figuring out how we can best make sure that we have a representative democracy that is truly listening to the people. And an easy way to do that is uncap the House. We also need to think about public funding of elections, because that's an easy way where we can get people who might not necessarily be able to get engaged with politics an opportunity to run and fundraise without necessarily having to reach out to millionaire donors. I think that those are a couple very easy steps that we can take to making sure that we can make our electoral bodies more accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And I appreciate the clapping, I do, but I've been up there. They've received a lot of clapping already in their lives, in their short campaign. So we can certainly hold it to the end. I'm sure of it. We can do it. We can do it. So our next candidate question is to Christian. As an Airbnb executive, do you think there is a way for that business model to succeed without contributing to the housing crisis? Would you support further regulation for short-term rental owners?
Yeah, so one, look, I don't work at Airbnb anymore. Two, my job at Airbnb was running anti-discrimination, privacy, and human rights. Something that I still haven't met anyone that's against those things. And if they are, well, maybe they won't be a supporter of my campaign, and that's okay. To me, we do have a housing crisis in America, and it's fundamentally a supply crisis. We need a lot more homes. But my personal view is local municipalities should regulate the housing stock and how it's used in the ways that best fulfill the interest of those municipalities. That's where this control, we don't need Congress coming up and saying, dictating one set of rules for everyone. I think local communities know best how to handle that. And I would be, fully supportive of local communities doing that. I think that's incredibly important. On my website, I've laid out a vision for how to solve our housing crisis. The reality is we're 5 to 6 million homes short in America right now. And what we desperately need is a national infrastructure bank that will invest in building the housing stock we're not, which is starter homes, loosely defined as homes that are 1,300 square feet or less. When I was born, 6% of new builds in the 80s. In the 80s, it was 30% of new builds. Today, it's 6% of new builds. That's why we have a crisis. Go to my website, urrutiafornh.com, and you'll see exactly what I think we should do to solve this crisis. Thank you so much, Christian.
Our next question is for all of you again, and if you'd like, we can change up the order, Heath, if you want to start with this one. What is your stance on ICE's increased presence across the country, and how can New Hampshire expect you to defend its citizens from the human rights abuses being committed by that agency? Additionally, do you think New Hampshire troops and municipalities should cooperate with ICE?
Yes, so I think that we need to abolish ICE. I don't think that it has any purpose, especially when we're talking about a situation where they are blatantly violating our laws and our Constitution. Back, before 9/11, we had the Department of Homeland Security did not exist. It was created for the purpose of placing a number of these programs like immigration and naturalization services under the Department of Homeland Security, which is the executive branch, rather than going through the judicial branch. And I think that we need to make sure that we bring the judicial branch back into the conversation and actually have them making the decisions as to whether or not people should be staying here, rather than the executive and who's in the White House.
Thank you.
I know. Good job. Good job. Good job on the not clapping. It's hard. Bottle it up. Bottle it up for the end. So we actually announced our campaign in front of the Stratford County Correction Center because our campaign starts where people's rights are being violated. I'm the granddaughter of a Holocaust survivor. I've literally stood on the edge of the grave that she was forced to dig herself under Nazi order in Nazi-occupied Poland. This is very real to me, what's happening. Very real. And I've actually said that we need to go further than abolishing ICE because, quite frankly, we can abolish ICE and then a whole new department will be made that's going to do the same thing. We need to actually outlaw Gestapo-style tactics that are being used by ICE to, quote-unquote, enforce this law. We need real immigration reform, which was on the table just before the last election. Everybody remember that? Yep. Do you remember who pulled it off? Remember why? Oh, right, because he wanted to use it for his campaign, and now we see why. Right? So these are really important things that we need to move in the direction of real immigration reform. I also think about the massive amount of money that has been put into ICE. And if we had put that money into immigration courts that are backlogged, how many wonderful new citizens we would have in our communities, in our schools, in our economy, paying taxes, and being wonderful members of our country. Thank you so much. Hold the applause. Hold it. Hold it. We're working on the mic.
We're working it out. Working it out.
We're a team.
So glad we have the opportunity to address this because this is so critical right now. Not another dollar for ICE. I think we were all absolutely heartbroken and outraged when two of our fellow citizens were murdered. And yes, they were murdered on the streets of Minneapolis. You know, over 25 years ago now, I swore a very solemn oath when I was commissioned a lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps to support and defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I honestly never thought that the domestic part would come into play. But I look around right now, and I see what ICE was doing to this country, and I don't even recognize the America that I risked my life for and that people I served with gave their lives for. And that is not okay. One of the proudest days I certainly have had, and I think we've all had, was not that long ago on a weekend when 4,000 of us stood out in Merrimack on a cold, cold day and said, not on my watch and not in my backyard will you put an ICE detention facility here. And you want to know what? You want to know why I'm hopeful? It's because our governor backed down. She backed down because we stood together and we stood up. Look, I've taken on tough fights throughout my entire life. I'm going to fight like hell for us and not a dollar more for ICE and its un-American tactics. Thank you.
So this is actually my second trip to Manchester today. This morning from 9 to 11, I stood outside the Norris Cotton Federal Building with 50 other people from the Granite State Organizing Project and interfaith leaders from around the state as a man named Sugrat from South Sudan came for his immigration check-in. And when he came out, he found that he had 6 months to leave the country. He is a third grader and a family here. And the woman who was in the check-in with him said that the official who gave them that decision told them that was the best that they could do. It is not the best that they could do. It is not good enough. On my website, I have a plan for how we fix our immigration system because the immigration plan that was proposed before this administration came to power was crap, and immigration has been broken in this country for decades under Democrats and Republicans. Most people have focused on ICE because what's happening right now is so horrific, but our legal immigration system has come to a complete standstill, and it is absolutely functionally broken. What we need is to put immigration enforcement into civil courts where the decisions can be made, because immigrants and people who come to this country are not criminals and should not be treated as such. We also need to remember what's happening in our communities and what role we can play. I am the chair of the Select Board in Hampton. When a question came before us for deliberative session this year about ICE, we started with a 2-2 vote, and I got our Select Board to vote 5-0 against partnering with ICE in Hampton, a purple community. That is the type of leadership that I want to see in Washington, not just people who talk about immigration, but people who show up and actually have things that they have done that have made life better for immigrants and people in our communities in New Hampshire.
We absolutely positively need immigration reform, and there absolutely positively needs to be not a dime spent more on the Department of Homeland Security. Look, it's very clear who's at stake, what's at stake in this race, and who's responsible for the mess we see with the Department of Homeland Security. President Trump and Kristi Noem and the Republicans in Congress passed a budget that increased the Department of Homeland Security budget 3 times. That's enough to dedicate your resources to health care in this country. Part of the question is, how do you know who to trust to fight back on this issue? Let me tell you what I've done since we've seen what's been happening with this administration. I called for Kristi Noem's impeachment before Alex Preddy was murdered. I called for not another dime in the Department of Homeland Security budget. I called to keep the government out of the business of terrorizing our communities, based on my experience as chair of the Portsmouth Police Commission when George Floyd was murdered. After that happened, we worked tirelessly to rebuild trust between our community and local law enforcement. What we're seeing on the ground now with ICE agents, they're not adhering to the same standards we'd expect for local law enforcement. Can you imagine allowing our local police officers to walk around our streets with masks? We would never tolerate it. It's unacceptable. I've mapped out a whole list of priorities and next steps for the Department of Homeland Security. I invite you to check out my website to learn more.
Can I respond to that really quickly? I think that not funding Department of Homeland Security is absolutely a huge problem. That's where FEMA is. That's where all of the money that's helping our coastal resilience is coming from. And the stop on DHS funding is what led to our body camera program that had been funded disappearing, and it's what's made it harder for families to get the funding that they need to recover from the storms that have been hammering our seacoast.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Christian, go ahead.
Thank you. Look, this issue for me is an incredibly personal issue. You know, at the beginning of this chat, I talked about first-generation American. Look, I've seen the beauty and, frankly, the real challenges that come with being an immigrant family in America. And when I look at what's happening in ICE, as someone that's sworn an oath to the Constitution multiple times, when I joined the military, when I became an officer, when I served in the Biden administration, I find what ICE and what Trump and what Stephen Miller have done is completely abhorrent to our values. I think ICE needs to be dismantled. It needs to be replaced with something that reflects our values. And we need to hold the folks that systematically violated the Constitution and the rule of law criminally accountable, starting with Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller. We need accountability in this country. And then we got to fix our immigration system. We can't have 15 million people living in the shadows. We can't have 15 million people being exploited because they are in the shadows. To me, I think that's abhorrent to the values that I think everyone in this room shares. And if I go to Washington, I'm going to hold these folks accountable and fight for change. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate question is for Heath. Heath, as the youngest candidate in the race, some are concerned about your experience and your more progressive views. Can you please talk about the experience you bring and why you feel you're ready for Washington?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I currently represent a Republican district in the New Hampshire State Legislature. It's one that voted for Governor Ayotte, voted for Governor Sununu. My hometown voted for Trump. I won by 16 votes. And that comes down to the fact that I was talking to independents, Republicans, Democrats, people who are politically disillusioned, and getting them to come out and support me. I mean, it's the fact that I've been out there talking to people regardless of their political affiliation, and people are looking for something different. We have to understand why Trump won in 2024 and 2016. It's not because Democrats necessarily lost. It's because we didn't lose to Trump. We lost to the couch. People stayed home. They didn't come out. And that's where we have to motivate them. And that's what Democrats have not necessarily been doing. We've been saying, we're not Trump, we're not Trump. We need to give people a reason to come out and vote for us. And that's exactly what I've done in my state legislative races, and that's what I've been doing in this congressional race. And I think people have been receptive to the message that we've been putting out and the topics that we've been talking about, because we're addressing the real needs and concerns of everyday people.
Thank you.
This question is for everyone again. The cost of living continues to skyrocket. What is your plan to meaningfully bring down the cost of things like housing, gas, groceries, and utilities? Christian, if you want to start.
I've been told I've been getting a little feedback here, so no, it's okay. So look, we have a cost crisis in America. And one of the things, let's just acknowledge it, the tariffs from Trump are a major contributor to that right now. When you look at the price of beef in America, of basic groceries in America, they've skyrocketed over the past years. One of the direct results is this economy of choice by Trump that is punishing people. And it's also the war in Iran. I think everyone that's filling up their gas tank has seen how much the price of gas has gone up, $1.50 since the start of this war. So a few things we can do in Congress. One, let's take the tariff power back from the president. Congress has abdicated too much responsibility and authority to the president. Two, we should actually not be funding the war in Iran. We need to bring a close to it. We need to ensure that ultimately the Strait of Hormuz is open. The actions of Donald Trump kick that closure off. And three, we actually have to start investing in more energy here in the United States that's clean and that's affordable and that keeps us disconnected from these disastrous wars in the Middle East. That will start bringing down costs that are a choice of Trump's policies.
What we've seen in this country in my lifetime, since 1975, we've experienced the largest redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 1%, to the tune of $40 trillion. The average age for a first-time homebuyer in America today is 40 years old. 40% of Americans are saddled with some kind of medical debt, and the vast majority of students who complete a four-year degree are coming out with student debt. The fact is, we have put terrible burden on the middle class at the expense of the billionaires in Washington as they get tax breaks. We've seen what this administration is choosing to prioritize. The Trump administration is prioritizing tax breaks for billionaires, ballrooms, and bombs. We can change those policies. We can change our fiscal policy that says we're not going to make permanent tax breaks for the richest 1%. We're not going to increase the Department of Homeland Security budget beyond what's reasonable to protect our shores and our country. We're not going to escalate the national deficit so we compress the middle class to the point that nobody can afford to even buy a car because the interest rates are way too high. And yes, I agree with Christian. We got to eliminate the illegal tariffs, and we got to end this disastrous war in Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz and bring gas prices down.
Yes, so it is very expensive to live in New Hampshire and pretty much anywhere right now, and war definitely is making it more expensive, so we should stop fighting wars and spending $137 billion a year on nuclear weapons. That would be a great start, right? That's a lot more than we spend on things like SNAP and Medicaid, which actually help people. I would also like to see us do things like invest in universal health care. I sit on a budget committee, and I see that one of the key drivers of cost in municipal budgets and school budgets and household budgets is how much it costs to go to the friggin' doctor, and how much time that you have to spend like calling your insurance company or going back and forth to the pharmacy and asking them for a prior authorization or changing the coding on something. That is time and money that is not well spent. I believe in universal health care from the day that people are born until the day that they die, and that health care should include things like vision and dental, because we have eyes and teeth, and it should include your ears, and it should include mental health care, and those things would be great, and they would save us a lot of money, and they would lower our property taxes in New Hampshire. I also believe that we should fully fund our public schools, because the federal government promised to do that, and they have not lived up to their end of the bargain when it comes to things like Title I funding and IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Again, healthcare and special education are two of the biggest drivers of costs in our schools, and that is something that we should not have to pay by ourselves. We need partners in Washington, D.C. But there's also basic things that we could do, like bring back the programs that help people winterize and weatherize their homes so that they can save money on their electricity bills. There is so much that Washington can do and that we can do together on this.
This may be the most important topic that we talk about tonight. Let's be clear. There are two sets of rules right now in Donald Trump's America. There's a set for the top 2%, some call them the Epstein class, and then there's a set for the 98% of the rest of us. This economy works for people with generational wealth and generational power, not folks here in New Hampshire. I didn't grow up in a wealthy or well-connected family. I know what it's like to try to figure out how to pay rent. I was a public school kid and worked 3 jobs to get through college and got a scholarship. And then I joined the Marines, and that was hard, and I struggled. And then years later, when I went to continue my education, I took out hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans. My husband's the son of immigrants. They came to this country with next to nothing. And we both worked really hard. But now hard work just isn't enough. And that is we're starting to see the slipping away of the American dream. Here's some concrete things that I think we need to do, and I will be focused on when I get to Congress. Number one, we need to work toward Medicare for all who want it, which would immediately do 2 things. It would reduce out-of-pocket costs for healthcare and reduce out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs. Number 2, we need to get out of these endless wars in the Middle East that is causing our gas prices to go up more than $1 throughout our district. And we have a housing problem, supply and demand. We got to build more housing, and we got to do it faster, and we got to do it cheaper. And that's what I'm going to be focused on our behalf.
So my perspective and how I approach all of these problems is stop the bleeding, relieve the pain, fix the problem. Our affordability is all connected, right? And the number one through line is healthcare. We need universal healthcare. We need healthcare reform, all the way from how we're provided healthcare to what is happening with insurance companies to making healthcare providers a nonprofit versus for-profit industry. Okay, that's number one. We need to address our housing issue. Part of that is diversifying what we have for housing, incorporating working class families into new developments and providing access to them for specific housing dedicated to people in a tax bracket, an income bracket that can stay there and continue living here and not get priced out of New Hampshire, not get taxed out of New Hampshire. We need you here. So we need a Marshall Plan for the U.S. Okay, this is something that some of you may have heard Representative Khanna talk about. It's something that hits home with me, and I've been gaining more and more traction with this. It's very real. We need it now. We also need to pass the tax on billionaires. That's a big thing that will help us fund some of these programs that are falling short, just as some of my other primary mates have spoken about. All of these are interconnected. Stop the bleeding, relieve the pain, fix the problem. Thank you.
So yes, we have to stop the wars. We can't get involved with things like Venezuela or Iran, and we need to actually make sure that we have a check on the president. We need to overturn the 2001-2002 authorizations for use of military force to make sure that Congress is actually doing their job in voting on these conflicts. I think that we need to make sure that we pass things like universal health care. We need to make sure that we push for universal education to make sure that we can actually lower some costs. Because, I mean, as many of you are all aware, I mean, some of the biggest tax drivers here locally are your property taxes. And schools are really pushing a lot of those costs to go up because the state's downshifting, the federal government has downshifted, and we need to make sure that we force the federal government to actually fulfill its end of the bargain, its end of the deal. Because in the IDEA law, it says that they should be funding schools to at least 50%. And that's something that we need to be doing, and we need to actually force them to do if they're not going to do it on their own. I also think that we need to make sure that we're talking about how we can actually push this affordability crisis as an issue for this upcoming election in a way where we are able to actually show people how these tariffs and how these other issues are implemented and how they're affecting people on a day-to-day basis. Because we have been seeing so many of these costs go up and so many of these things that Trump directly has caused us to suffer from. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next candidate-specific question is for Maura. So Maura, how can we trust that you will hold Israel accountable for the genocide in Gaza when you've taken money from Israeli lobbyists?
So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and I want to be very clear. I have not taken any money from AIPAC, which I believe is what you're referring to. I've not taken any money from AIPAC. I have not asked for AIPAC's endorsement. I'm not seeking their endorsement, nor have they endorsed my campaign. We are receiving, however, contributions from all around our state and all around our country. I think what people are referring to when they're wondering about money is, I don't know that everyone who's contributed to me, what myriad other organizations that they have contributed to. What I also want to talk about here tonight is I don't take a dime of corporate PAC money, and I never have, and I never will. And I was the first candidate in this race to release an anti-corruption platform because Washington is rigged, and we have to get big money out of the system. What does that look like? It's overturning Citizens United, some of the things we've talked about. It is potentially, as Heath mentioned, public financing of campaigns. I've lost my voice 4 times on this campaign already from having to call people and ask for money. I hate doing it. But we are running against a gentleman, Anthony DiLorenzo, who gave $4 million to UNH 3 years ago. And I'm the only candidate on this stage who's out fundraising him. And I will continue to work my heart out for the people in New Hampshire because 700,000 people in this seat or in this district depend on Chris Pappas and his team for things like, can I get a passport because my aunt's dying in Romania, or my Social Security benefits didn't come in, or I need to get at my VA benefits. And that's real. And I take that responsibility seriously, and I'm going to fight like hell for all of us. Thank you.
No, can I just correct the record that you're not the only person that's outraged Anthony DiLorenzo. I have also done that.
Okay. Sarah, this next question is for you.
I'm ready. Thank you.
Your website does not list any specific accomplishments. What specific basis is there for you to say, with respect to Ukrainian democracy, that you personally worked with foreign dignitaries, drafted bipartisan legislation, and built coalitions for passage? Can you share what you specifically did there?
Absolutely. So when the full-scale invasion of Ukraine broke out, I couldn't sleep for 3 days. I needed to figure out how to help. And with my background in education and nonprofit work, I was lucky enough to get connected to a powerhouse group of Ukrainian women who were on the ground and noticed that the eyewitness accounts and what was happening on the front lines was not actually reflected in the news and media. And they asked if I wanted to get involved. And I said, absolutely. And so I got involved as the pro bono executive director for an organization called Detalion that was doing exactly that, documenting the war crimes and atrocities, working directly with the ICC, The Hague, and getting those eyewitness accounts in front of decision makers around the world, from Boris Johnson all the way to every single member of Congress, which is why I know Rubio knows better. I'm not saying I like him. I'm not saying he's my friend, but he knows better. So that was something that was really important to me because those were voices that needed to be heard. I went on to be a founding board member of the American Coalition for Ukraine, the nation's largest advocacy network for Ukraine that brought together everyone from Syrian Americans to non-hyphenated Americans. And together we actually got $61 billion worth of aid through Speaker Johnson's office. Yes, I went down to Shreveport, Louisiana and built coalition on the ground. I was really honored last year to be invited by the president of Ukraine to visit Ukraine. I take this work to heart, and no one knows the fight that we're fighting better than Ukrainians. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Sarah. Stefany, this question is for you specifically. You are not your mother.
Newsflash. It is true.
Newsflash for everyone here. However, it is hard to separate the family connections you do have. How can New Hampshire voters trust you to vote for their best interests when your family has so many connections to Washington insiders? You have previously worked as a strategist for your mother. How can people feel like you won't continue her record?
So I'm the candidate in this race, and I'm going to work like hell to earn every vote in my own right based on my own experience. I'm grateful for the chance to be here with you all today. I'm grateful to answer any question anyone has that didn't get covered tonight. And we're almost at the 1-year mark in this campaign. We've been up and down the district, town by town, living room by living room, coffee shop by coffee shop. That's what it's going to take. Look, the fact of the matter is, this race isn't about any one of us. It's about all of us. It's about the fight that we need to bring to Washington in this moment. It's about the change that is needed by winning a majority in the U.S. House so we have leverage to push back against the disastrous Trump administration. They're asking for $1.5 trillion for a war. While they cut health care, they've made it very clear. What they want to do is fund this war that they've made no case for to the American people at the expense of our health care. We can do so much better than this, and all I ask is a chance to be heard and to be given a shot. And the fact is, the New Hampshire voters get to decide who this nominee is, and I'm going to work tirelessly to earn your vote in my own right.
Thank you. Okay, back to questions for all. Thank you, everybody, for individually answering. We appreciate that. Sometime this month, the U.S. national debt will hit $40 trillion, which is quite the number, placing us on an unsustainable path for the future. Other than raising taxes on the super rich, how else do you plan to pay down our national debt? I think Christian.
So, one, let's talk about how we got to this position to begin with in America. A huge portion of that is the fact that we had the forever wars. Almost $10 trillion of our national debt comes from the forever wars. We need to stop that. But look, we got to be really frank. I get it. You want to take taxing the billionaire class off the table? That's a huge portion of this. That's like the most obvious part and way to do it. And I'll tell you the statistics. The reality is that the top 1% in America has basically gotten all of the gains of the last 25 years. The bottom 50% own 1% of the wealth. The top 1%, 40% of the wealth. For us to tackle the national debt in a serious way, we actually need to be talking about how do we actually tax the billionaire class? How do we close the loopholes? Why is private equity executives paying a lower effective tax rate than everyone in this room? Jeff Bezos pays a 4% effective tax rate, lower than any teacher in Manchester. That's how we actually start to tackle this problem with seriousness. And then it's stopping the bloat in Washington. The amount of money that's given to corporations, to subsidize corporations, to subsidize oil and gas needs to stop, and we have to tackle the corruption as well.
This administration has made it very clear what their priorities are. Tax breaks for billionaires, And everyone in this room who paid $1 in federal income tax, you paid more than a laundry list of billionaire corporations, including Disney and Palantir and many, many others, which I'm happy to share the long list for you. We need to change our tax code to reflect the fact that the billionaire class needs to be paying their fair share. We need to be directing resources in a way that is responsible. We need to roll back the tax breaks for the richest 1%. Look, Trump's made it clear what he believes. He wants us to believe that the only role for the federal government is to pay for the war. We've spent $1 trillion on the Department of Defense budget without an audit. We've made permanent tax breaks for the richest 1%, and we've got federal income tax structure that is not taxing corporate America in spite of their record profits. This is a matter of how we choose to write our policy. It's a matter of who's paying for these tax bills. And right now, the American people and the middle class are paying a disproportionate share to fund the interest we need to be spending on the national deficit. We can change this with sound policy, with a tax code that resembles fundamental fairness. Elon Musk does not need to be a trillionaire, and Jeff Bezos does not need a $53 million wedding, so that we can cut Medicaid and SNAP benefits for seniors in need. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
I agree very strongly with what Stefany just laid out on the table. I think it's incredibly important that we get the national debt under control, and we recognize what are the biggest drivers of the increases in the national debt, right? Things like healthcare spending is a huge driver of those costs. And so we need to figure out what is worthwhile healthcare spending and what is wasteful healthcare spending. And I also want to be very clear that I do believe that healthcare spending that makes people healthier, that lets us take better care of ourselves, is money well spent. I think money that we can invest in families and early childhood is money that is well spent. Money that I don't think is well spent is all of the money that we are spending right now on the war in Iran. I think that, the big bill that we saw passed last summer cut SNAP, cut Medicaid, cut support for Planned Parenthood, cut taxes for the ultra wealthy, and who's left with the bill? It's us. And in New Hampshire, we know this so well. Like, we live in a state that is 48th out of 50th when it comes to state support for cities and towns. And so we're used to having low-income people, working families, pay way more than their fair share. So when it comes to tackling the national debt, I'm not going to pretend that this is an easy question. This is a really complicated one. But I think that having a conversation about it is incredibly important right now, because like the interest alone on the national debt last year would have paid to repair all of the bridges in the United States. Like, infrastructure spending is money that we need to be spending on infrastructure. So I just think that this is a conversation that we need to have as a Democratic Party, and not let it be something that the Republicans say that they're the responsible ones in power.
Yeah.
One of the biggest threats to our national security is actually our national debt. Don't believe me, take it from Admiral Mike Mullen, who was our nation's most senior military officer dating back to the Obama administration. He's been saying this now for 16 years. There's been a lot of discussion of these forever wars and entanglements in the Middle East. I'm a veteran of those wars. We spent a lot of money on those wars. We also lost a lot of people in those wars. I came back and I continued serving and worked for President Obama to try to make our country better, and spent a lot of time as a senior Pentagon official traveling throughout the Middle East, meeting with world leaders, meeting with military leaders, fighting and working toward peace. I share that just to say I can stand on the floor of the United States House of Representatives with a hell of a lot of credibility and push back on this president when he tries to engage us in more of these nonsense, illegal, unnecessary, unauthorized wars in the Middle East. That's the first place I would start to look for funding. The second place I'd start is we do need to tax billionaires. My colleagues up here have said that, plain and simple. But the third place I'd go is the Pentagon budget. Pentagon hasn't ever passed an audit. It's ridiculous. We don't need $1.5 trillion to defense. You know why politicians don't touch it? Because they're afraid of someone saying that they don't support the troops. Folks, no one's ever going to accuse me of not supporting the troops. So I'm going to serve on the Armed Services Committee to protect the jobs at our shipyard and Pease Air Reserve Base. And one of the first things I'm going to do is make the Pentagon pass an audit and look for money there to fund our debt and fund health care and our domestic priorities. Thank you.
A budget is a moral and ethical document. And I have said this already. A number of my colleagues have said it, but I mentioned it when we had the affordability question. I am 100% backing Congressman Ro Khanna and Senator Bernie Sanders' tax on billionaires legislation that is introduced right now. And I will be down in Washington, D.C. next week working on getting people to sign on to it, because I'm already working on these things. I haven't stopped working on them. And when we're looking at right now what this budget has done and where they've put the priority, the tax cuts have been on large corporations. And now here in New Hampshire, we have 77,000 seniors who have either lost or are at risk of losing their health care. That is not a morally or ethically aligned budget, in my opinion. So we have work to do across the board. When we're looking at what's happening with this endless war, I'm going to go off script a little bit here and say, the National Security Plan is about a 160-plus page document. What's publicly available is about 6. Everything from what's happening with Venezuela to what's happening in the Middle East is our current president's desire to posture to China where he is right now. Guess what? It's not working. It's failing. So we have now spent what over the last how many weeks in this? And we can't give health care to our people. That's not okay. We need to put taxes back in place to fund the programs that we need, and we need to have a tight, effective, and efficient budget. We need to do more with less expense. Sorry. I know, it's like the vision. I want her here. Look over.
So, yes, we need to end the wars, the foreign wars that we're engaging in. We also need to take a hard look at the Pentagon budget, like Maura said. I think that that's a very easy way that we can lower some of the budget deficits that we're facing. And this is a situation where when we're talking about how the Pentagon has been funded, I think that we've seen it balloon, especially over the past 20 years. We need to restore it to pre-Iraq War levels. I think that that's a very easy start. And it's a way that we can definitely restore a lot of potential funding. We also need to tax our billionaires. We need to tax large corporations. And we also need to put subsidies that these large corporations are getting towards actual small businesses. We need to take away these tax breaks that we're providing to huge corporations and shift them to the average everyday people. We need to actually think about how these corporations are utilizing things like public services. The fact that you have companies like Walmart telling their employees how they can qualify for federal benefits is wrong. They have enough profit every single year to be able to pay for their employees' health insurance, but yet they're leeching off the federal government. These things are very easy fixes that we can pursue that can lower our costs, increase our potential revenues, and overall lower our total debt. Because as the youngest one up on the stage, it is very concerning, especially when Trump is engaging in wars that could terminate the petrodollar, which would actually make it so that debt goes into effect and we have to pay it back.
Thank you, everyone. This is our last question before our closing statement. So we'll start with Heath. What would success look like for you after one term, even if it doesn't get headlines?
Success after one term, yeah. That would be, I would have to say there's one big issue that I think that we can get across the table, and that's banning corporations from the single-family housing market. It's something that Trump talked about during his State of the Union. And I think that that's something that we need to be pushing for right now, because the single-family housing market has been so inaccessible for so many people. It has been so expensive, partially because we're seeing large corporations, private equity firms come in, buy up a lot of these single-family houses, which drives up the initial asking price because they have $100,000 that they can slap around that we as individuals don't. And when we see that happen, they're not turning them into long-term rentals. They're turning them into short-term rentals, Airbnbs, things that actually lower our vacancy rate while not actually providing new units. And that also increases all of the surrounding rental rates, which is a huge problem. And in New Hampshire, housing is the #1 issue in the state. We need to figure out how we can make it accessible for people. And if we can actually ban corporations from the single-family housing market, I think that that's a very easy way of doing that so that we can eliminate a huge driver in what's causing these costs to go up. Thank you.
This is a big question for 90 seconds, guys. All right, I'm going to look this way, prompt. Okay, so for me, this comes down to affordability and accountability. So we need, what I would like to see after my first term is healthcare reform in place, immigration reform in place, a pause of student debt interest rate. This should be a bipartisan thing. We should be able to get that done. A restoration of our soft power. Our soft power staves off endless wars, right? This is really important for us, and we can rebuild more efficiently and effectively. We need to start that. It'll take about 7 years to rebuild USAID. We need to have fully funded schools and rebuild our Department of Ed to actually support our teachers, right? That's incredibly important to me. And we need to hold individuals that are currently in this administration accountable for what they have done. How am I for time? Oh, good. So those are things that are incredibly important to me. We need to pull all the legal stops on what we're able to do to hold this administration accountable, because this is not left or right, it's right or wrong. Thank you.
Okay, 90 seconds. It's a lot to get done. First, I'm going to set up the best constituent services program that this state has ever seen. Why? 700,000 people depend on the person in this office for their veterans benefits, their Social Security benefits, can they get a passport? And that really matters. We had a saying in the Marines, which when I was a logistics officer in Iraq, which was the infantry says jump, we say how high. My team knows, they're standing right there. Our mantra is the constituent says jump, we say how high. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Next, accountability, costs, and corruption. For accountability, we're going to hold these people accountable. That's dragging RFK Jr. down for a hearing. That's dragging Pete Hegseth down for a hearing. That's firing whoever one of them need to be fired. I'm going to do that from the Armed Services Committee, which is and also going to stand up to Trump and make sure he gets out of these reckless wars in the Middle East that are driving up our gas prices at the pump, and that our 18 and 19-year-old men and women who graduate Central High School are the ones who are going to go fight if we put boots on the ground. In terms of costs, we got to pass Medicare for all who want it. Lower prescription drug prices, lower out-of-pocket costs. Other costs that we need to do is we need to fix the housing market, supply and demand. Huge, huge changes that we need there. I plan on also serving on the committee in the Congress that oversees affordable housing, because we have a lot of work to do. Another thing I want to get done is expanding AmeriCorps, an optional service, so that kids like me who want to serve, who can earn money for college, if they're willing to do things like serve in a climate corps or a medical corps or other ways to earn money to go to get ahead. If I had more time, I'd say more. Thank you.
That was a good one.
What does success look like in 2 years?
It's a good one.
I want to see us raise the minimum wage. I think that the fact that it's still $7.25 is a huge problem and completely outrageous. So that would be definitely something that I think is doable and that I would like to be prioritizing in my first term. I also would like it to be the case that every single one of the people in this room and the people who live in this district have enough money to put food on the table and enough time to sit with their families and eat it. To have the time and the stability and a sense of certainty that, like, your government is not going to pull the rug out from underneath you or change your citizenship status or change your benefits access. If you were on Medicare Advantage and you lost your health care coverage this year, I want to make sure that you have access to health care. I want to make sure that our families know that if their kids go to school, they're going to be fed there and that their kids are going to get the services that they need. I want to make sure that our standing around the world is restored by doing things like putting funding back into USAID. And I want to be in a room just like this one 2 years from now, asking you what I can do better for our district to better serve you and to hear more of your stories. I think that being in this district is incredibly important. And so I plan, when I'm in Washington, if I'm not working, to be back here in your living rooms, in your driveways, and your coffee shops, asking you how I'm doing and getting your feedback and changing plans accordingly. So thank you.
Many priorities for the first 2 years, but I want to focus on healthcare because I think that's one of the greatest pain points facing the district here. First, we need to pass Senator Sanders' legislation that expands Medicare to include vision, dental, and hearing. As Carleigh said, our eyes, our mouth, and our ears are part of our body, and we need to be insuring those parts of our body accordingly. We can pass that legislation. There's bipartisan support. We need to ban the use of AI in determining eligibility and prescription drug eligibility in healthcare. Right now, today, that is happening. People are being denied coverage for prescriptions that they've been taking for years because an AI model has determined they now need a prior authorization. It's unacceptable. We need to put the power back in the hands of the doctors to determine what care people receive and what prescriptions they get, and bring down the cost of health care. The average New Hampshire family is going to see costs upwards of $7,000 more for health care this year. We've got to restore the cuts to Medicaid, and we've got to restore the extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits while we work to rebuild a system that actually works to care for people in this country again. No one's going to fight harder on day one for the health and well-being of the American people. That's my pledge to you, and I hope to be back here in 2 years doing everything I can to show what progress we've made and what more we're going to be able to do to restore your trust that government can work for people again.
We need to stand up to Trump. The Democratic Party, we got to be frank with ourselves. The Democratic Party has failed to properly check the president as it stands. We need to be the opposition party, like a true opposition party. We need to get the folks in the Trump administration that are violating the law, that are violating the Constitution, systematically by design, put them under oath, ask them questions, hold them accountable, and I think we should be seeking impeachment of the president for what he's done to the Constitution and to the American people. I'm so tired of seeing a Washington that doesn't have fight in them. We need to be a Washington that has fight, that brings vigor, that says no one is above the law, no one is above the Constitution, that corruption is unacceptable, that members of Congress shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks, that people shouldn't be able to monetize the fact that they served Congress by going off to be lobbyists. Congress is failing every single one of you, and all of you should be pissed off, okay? And if I go to Washington, the measure I want what success will look like is going into a room like this and people saying, you know what, that guy has the guts to actually stand up to this administration and its un-American designs.
All right. Thank you so much for taking all of those questions. We're going to wrap up with our candidates' closing statements, and then we'll give a brief thanks. No, I'm sorry. All questions have been submitted. I'm so sorry. If you'd like to speak with someone afterwards, that's more than...
No, thank you.
Sir, please sit down.
No. Sir, we had submissions open for 2+ weeks, so the time has passed. Please have a seat and let us finish our program. No, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay. Please move on to closing statements, folks. Thank you so much.
Chris.
Be a conversation about Gaza.
Can we all take 30 seconds, Jess? Can we take 30 seconds and just respond to where we are on Gaza?
No, if you would like to, ma'am, I appreciate the question, and it was on our list, but we are running out of time for what the library has allowed us to use. And you can speak with any one of these folks afterwards.
For Gaza.
Hey,
anyone to sit down.
So, guys.
No, guys, I understand. Don't.
It's all right, but I'm saying we're miscounting that.
So here's the thing, guys. We are all here on a time schedule. It is an important question. There is so much to get to and so little time to answer in 90 seconds.
It's extremely important. All of us would love to talk to you more. We'd like to finish the closing statements. Thank you, Jess.
If the candidates would agree to address a question about Gaza for 30 seconds, we do have a Gaza question.
We're happy to stay afterward and Jess.
Hey, excuse me. This is supposed to be a civil forum. This is not necessarily the room for the protest.
Important issue in America.
And I am going to ask the question, and I ask that you give me the time to do that.
You had a question about progressive.
Excuse me. I am trying to get to the question you are very concerned about. So let's hold it for a moment. 30 seconds for each of you. Christian, you can start.
Can I just say, hold on. 30 seconds isn't enough. If we're going to answer the question, let's do it justice and give it the same amount of time we give all the other questions.
Okay. Look, so you can each have, we're going to do this in lieu of closing statements. I apologize.
That's crazy. I think we should answer.
Let's do both. We can do both. We can do 90 seconds and we can do closing statements.
All right. Not like we have forum in a process.
Okay, we will, guys, this is unplanned. Okay, so give us a second to catch our breath.
We got this.
Israel, do you consider the actions of the Israeli government a genocide, and would you vote to stop aid to the Israeli government? How will you best support Jewish people at home and abroad? Christian, would you please start?
Yeah. So 1, there is a genocide in Gaza. 2, okay, thank you. We're going to have a civil, look.
Hey, excuse me, sir. Everybody needs to please sit down and take a big box breath, okay? Breathe it in, hold it, and breathe it out. We are answering the question.
Hey guys, if any of you want to run for this seat, you're welcome to.
There is no genocide.
We'll hear from them what they believe. If you continue, I am going to ask you to leave. Please stop. We are trying to get to this question.
Just quit.
Thank you.
Excuse me, please. Stop. Do you want the answer?
You need to answer it. Can be yes or no. But you need to answer. They have the airport, they have the when to give you the answer, what they want to give you.
They're going to...
You cannot be done for somebody to say for the federal. No. If the Israelis do something is bad, yes, Israel is that. Look it. You don't believe in that? You're not going to command me to say what you want to do.
Thank you, Mary. Guys, stop.
That's the way it goes.
The Christian.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Look.
Okay, everybody, please stop. Stop.
Okay.
Everybody sit down. This is not an open forum, but we are taking this question, and they are going to answer it with the 90 seconds and then give their closing statements, and that will be it for tonight. You can ask them whatever you want afterwards. So, Christian.
Yeah, thank you. Look, this is plainly a fraud issue in America. Let's just be frank. This is a fraud issue in America, and it's an issue where there's an emotional attack. I want to be clear about what my views are and the dialogue I think we need to have in this country. It's about our values and a foreign policy that reflects our values. And to me, when I look at Gaza and the devastation there, I think that genocide has been committed. And when I look at what I think the United States should do and the values that we should have in our foreign policy, I don't think we should send bombs and bulldozers to be used in Gaza. And I don't think we should use our taxpayer dollars to subsidize a military for a country that has health care when we don't have health care. But let's just acknowledge one thing too. This in America, whether you agree with it or not, is ultimately wrapped with the conversation of anti-Semitism as well. And you can disagree with that, and that's fine. But we have an anti-Semitism problem that's growing in America, and we all need to tackle it. And we need to divide between being Jewish and what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing. But what we need is a civil discourse of passion Yes, but a civil discourse. And so look, you all are going to go out into your communities and talk about this. What I ask is listen, be empathetic, and be tied with your values. That's how we bring change to our country and our community. Thank you.
The fact is here, we need to be ganging up on the problem and not on each other in this party. Democracy works when we put our shoulder to shoulder together and fight for the change we want to see in our communities and in our world. We saw what happened in Gaza. Unconscionable, despicable, unacceptable, as was the terrorist attacks in October. The fact is, we just saw more death in Lebanon just today. And the war in Iran has only...
50 million people dead in the last 30 years.
All right, guys, quiet. Let Stefany finish, please. Thank you.
We know what's at stake. We cannot send another dime to Netanyahu in the same way I don't want to send another dime to Trump for a war in Iran that is taking resources away from what the American people need. We can do this together. We need to gang up on the problem, not on each other, and get our resources directed where they need to be, which is back to the American people.
Are we also doing closing statements, or is this
Yes,
it?
we
All right.
Is this our closing statement?
No, if everyone's okay with staying for the closing statements after, I would like to get everybody the chance to do that. Thank
Just
you.
want clarity.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said here. I am horrified by the situation in Gaza. It's a humanitarian catastrophe and it's a genocide. And what that means is that we need to work together with the international community to bring aid to the people in Palestine. And we need to have a civil conversation in this country about what our foreign policy and our future involvement in the region looks like. And we have not been able to have that conversation in this country for a very long time. And it's one of the main reasons that I am running for this office. I have taught about religion and conflict and peace for the past 2 decades. I have studied this, and I have sat in Temple Israel in Portsmouth. I have sat with the people who are involved in Coalition for Just Peace in the Middle East, and I understand how many people are devastated by what is happening every single day. But I also want us to recognize, like Christian said, that anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim sentiments in this country are a real problem, and they are an unacceptable byproduct of our feelings about this war and the way that we treat one another. The way that we have our conversations with one another is what our democracy consists of. This is what democracy looks like. It does not happen in other rooms. It does not happen on election day. It happens in spaces like this and in the way that we treat one another. And if we cannot listen to things that are hard to hear, if we cannot continue to come back, then there is no hope for us as a country.
Carleigh. First of all, thank you to Cristina and to Jess for bringing us together and moderating, a very great forum, and one with rules. And you guys worked really, really hard on this. So I just want to acknowledge that. And to my fellow candidates, and Sarah, thank you for stepping up. Right there. This is, as some of my colleagues have said, this is clearly something that is fraught with emotion, and of course it is. I mean, I'd say as a mother, and frankly as a human. I mean, I don't know how you can't look at what happened, the suffering, the humanitarian disaster, in the famine, the death and destruction in Gaza, and also the rape and sexual violence and destruction on October 7th, and not be absolutely sick to your stomach. We can never, ever, ever, ever let that happen again. And that is what, we need to be focused on. We have to get to a place where we have peace in this region. Look, I fought in a war in this region that was torn apart, ultimately by religion. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, in Israel and throughout, and countries surrounding it as a senior Pentagon official. I've sat across the table with Netanyahu. I've sat across the table with world leaders. And I can say that I believe the only real path forward here is eventually working toward a two-state solution where the Palestinian people can live safely and securely without being governed by Hamas, and the Israeli people can live safely and securely without the threat of Hamas and being governed by the person of their choice. And while I will be focused on us first, that is what I hope to play somewhat of a role in when I represent us in Congress. Thank you again for all being here, and thank you to Jess and Cristina.
So I want to first start by thanking everyone for regrounding, because united we stand and divided we truly fall. And it's why, a big part of why we are where we are in this country. I'm not afraid to have the tough discussions. Many of you in this room know that because we've had them. I want to thank my primary mates up here for their words on anti-Semitism. I'm the only Jewish candidate in the race, and it's already been a target. My family in Israel have been in bunkers, and I am the only candidate who, as the senior executive coordinator for Med Global, a Syrian-American founded medical aid, international medical aid organization, raised $800,000 to support medical teams going into Gaza. I literally supported teams going into medical hospitals in Gaza. When you have extremist leaders in charge, be it Netanyahu or Hamas, who do not represent the Palestinian people, it's always the people that suffer. Always. And it is heartbreaking, and it is not okay. To wrap this up from an emotional standpoint, because I'm sure you can all feel the difference in my energy after this discussion. From a legislative standpoint, the United States needs to engage with the ICC and participate in prosecuting war criminals around the world, be it Netanyahu or Putin. Thank you.
Thank you. So what has been happening in Gaza is unequivocally a genocide. It is a situation where we have seen the Israeli state expand and definitely ramp up after October 7th. But despite the condemnable actions that happened that day, it does not justify collective punishment. Nothing does. And I think that needs to be called out. The fact that we as Americans are funding this is unacceptable. And we need to stop providing weapons to Israel, whether they're offensive or defensive. It's the fact that they have crossed a line, and it is something where we need to put our foot down and say, no, this is not right, this is not correct. And I'm very troubled by the way that the Israeli government has created an apartheid state. I mean, we have been living under a two-state solution for a number of years, and it has not necessarily been the most effective. I think that we need to be trying to move forward to a secular state solution that will actually make sure that we treat all people the same, regardless of their religion. And that, I think, is really important to making sure that we have self-determination provided to all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christian, do you want to start us off with closing?
Yeah, thank you. Cool. Great.
I think, look, if you're in this room, I suspect there's this feeling you have in your gut that something is deeply wrong in our country. I certainly do. Every day. It's the core reason to me for being in here. Our country needs change desperately, and we all need to focus on that. But to me, look, I just think it's ridiculous for candidates to come up and say, let me tell you now why I'm the best. You all will judge that. You are going to kick the tires a lot, trust me, all right? You're going to ask some hard questions, and that's good. Let me just tell you what I think you should use to measure the candidates, what our country needs to actually bring change. It's ultimately political courage. What's missing, the critical ingredient that's missing in our politics, is political courage. The courage to do the right thing, the courage to bring change, the courage to say enough to the Democrats too, frankly, and the party that has sometimes failed us, deeply failed us. That is what we need. And look, as you all continue to measure us all I ask that you measure my campaign, and you measure, I'd say, everyone's campaign. By that measure, who will bring change and who will exercise political courage to do that? Thank you all for being here today.
Lots of fun, yeah.
We all know the stakes could not be higher. That's why you all are here. We're 4 months away from this primary, and everywhere I go, people across the district are showing up, they're invested, they're listening closely, they're asking the hard questions. You all will make the decision about who gets the honor of representing the Democratic Party on the ballot in November. But what I hope you will evaluate is who you can trust to deliver based on who can bring the fight, based on who has a track record of delivering results in New Hampshire. And I hope you will ultimately conclude that person is me. I've built a small business here. I'm a public school kid, K through 12. I was a high school coach. I serve locally on my city council and on my police commission. I know what it takes to deliver for our communities, and I am ready to bring the fight. New Hampshire people want a government they can trust, want a government that's going to work for all of our families. And the way you evaluate that is who's been here, who knows the district, who can fight the hard fights and deliver the change we ultimately know our families need. No one fights harder than a mom for her kids, and I want to bring that same fight for all of our families. Thank you so much, and thank you to you both for this wonderful forum and making the time tonight. Thank you.
Go ahead, sorry.
Who do we want to represent us in Washington? That's the question. And the answer that we choose is going to make the next chapter of New Hampshire history, which is pretty exciting. So in addition to governing a town in New Hampshire, beating 2 Republicans, and leading right now, meeting every Monday night to make decisions about how we spend our tax money and hear from people when I don't get it right in Market Basket and at the bus stop and at the soccer field. I've spent the last 11 months driving around the district. I've been in every single town. You've probably seen me. I've maybe been in your living room or your driveway or your coffee shop, and I've asked people everywhere, what do you wish that politicians understood better about your experiences? Because we need leaders who listen and who ask us questions and who organize us so that we can build power and make change. And in addition to putting 20,000 miles on my car doing that, I have recruited over 600 people to volunteer for this campaign. And my question to you tonight is, do you want to be part of that? I promise that it's a lot more fun than sometimes it looks. It is the privilege of my life to be able to listen to all of the things that keep people up at night and to be in a position to do something about it. I'm running because we can't keep doing the same things in this country and expect any different results, right? More of the same isn't going to fix this, but together, I think we can.
Thank you all for being here. It says so much about everyone here that you took the time to come. It says so much about our commitment to our state, to our community, and to our country. Again, thank you to Cristina and to Jess for bringing us together and all your hard work. You know, one of the first things they tell you in the Marines, it's literally like day 2, is they look at you and they say, Lieutenant, it's not about you. It's about the mission and the people that you serve. So you're picking someone to go to work for the 700,000 people in this district at a time when we have a government where it's all about themselves. Literally, it's all about themselves. I think we need a new generation of leaders who are going to go to Washington, who are rooted in service, grounded in experience, who are ready and proven to fight like hell. And I'll tell you, my entire life has been about service, starting when I got an ROTC scholarship to attend college, and then I joined the Marines. And then when my battalion was due to go to the Iraq War, I voluntarily re-upped in order to join them. Years later, I came back, I campaigned for President Obama right here in New Hampshire. And then when veterans died across our country due to long wait times at the VA, I went down to Washington to be a part of the solution. I was really proud that President Obama appointed me to the leadership team of the VA and the Pentagon, where I stood up to 4-star generals fighting for women's reproductive rights in the United States Department of Defense. And for the last close to 10 years, I've been serving here in nonprofit boards throughout our community, working with my friend and our Congressman Chris Pappas on his Veterans Advisory Committee, and serving and volunteering with all of you in our Democratic Party. And I will tell you that nobody fights harder than a mom, that is true, except if that mom is also a Marine. Thank you all for being here. I hope to earn your support.
So I want to talk a little bit about this district. It's 28% Democrat, 33% Republican, and 40% independents or unaffiliated, like my husband and probably many of you in this room. A topic that wasn't covered tonight is I'm the only Harley-riding hunting Democrat on the ticket. I also have the honor of being endorsed by former Representative Adam Kinzinger. Why is that important to me? Because I will stand with anyone who will hold this administration accountable, and Adam knows that I am a principled leader full of courage, and that means everything to me. During a campaign event recently, a veteran looked at me and he said, "I just want to be proud of our country again." And that hit me to my core. And I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing heads nodding, and I think you feel it too. We can do this. It's not easy. We felt it tonight. There's going to be some bumps in the road. I don't need millions of dollars to win this when people cannot pay for groceries or get the medication they need. What I need is your living room, your kitchen table, your porch, your backyard. Because New Hampshire is still a person-to-person political space. And this is one of the things that I love most. Please stand strong. Learn more about me on my website, sarahc603.com. Thank you all, and Jess and Christina, thanks for holding it down, ladies.
Well, thank you all for being here. You know, as a 7th generation Gen Z state rep who comes from a working class background, it has been just so incredible being able to talk to so many of you on the campaign trail. And I'm so proud to have earned the support of so many different organizations and groups like the Southern New Hampshire DSA, groups like Citizens Impeachments, Citizens Against AI-PAC Corruption, the IBEW 104, the Grad Student Union at UNH. And I'm just so grateful for everybody who has chipped into the campaign and who has joined us along the way, because we need to be able to build coalitions. And that's exactly what I've done in Concord. And that's what I plan to do in Washington. I had 28 of my bills pass our chamber last year. I had 9 signed by the governor. I was the 2nd most active Democratic rep in the House, and I was also the 2nd most efficient at getting those bills passed. And I think that that's where we have to be looking. We have to figure out how we can get things done. And I have that track record. And I'm hoping that I have the opportunity to chat with some of you who I haven't spoken with yet and earn your vote, because this is a choice that will make a huge difference, and all of us need to participate. Thank you.
Can we get another round of applause?
Sorry, thank you. Before everyone goes, we just want to say thank you so much for all of you guys for running, for stepping up and running. It's not easy. Thank you for joining us here tonight. This is an unusual event. It's open to everybody, and we really appreciate your candor and your civility. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that came. We really appreciate it. We are working on a Senate one to come in July, so please follow us on our social media, on our website. And before you head home tonight, please go downtown, check out everything Manchester has to offer, and thanks for coming.
And before you go, please give our hosts an amazing round of applause. Thank you both so much.